Okay, this morning I'm going to go through the answers to the parallel lines homework. This first problem, we've got given that M is parallel to N, and they want us to prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Well, I can go ahead and say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 in this case, because if the lines are parallel, we know that alternate interior angles are congruent. So if lines are parallel, alternate interior angles are congruent. So just a two-step proof there on number 1. On number 2, the given is that L is parallel to K. That's the given. Again, on this one, because we know the lines are parallel, we can say that 1 and 2 are supplementary. So angle 1 is supplementary to angle 2. And our reason for that is we know that if the lines are parallel, same side interior angles are supplementary. Okay, let's go ahead and move down to number 3. Number 3, they're telling us that angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. That's the given. And they want us to prove that M is parallel to N. Well, you notice in the picture 3 and 4, these are corresponding angles. And one of our postulates says that if corresponding angles are congruent, then we know the lines are parallel. So reason, corresponding angles congruent, lines are parallel. So again, another two-step proof here. Okay, number 4, now I realized, and I told you this in class, this one did not have the lines marked. So this time I'm going to mark the lines. If you marked them the other way, it really doesn't matter because both sets of lines are parallel in the given. So A is parallel to B and X is parallel to Y. That's the given. So it would matter in terms of your steps here, but as far as being able to prove it, you still would be able to prove it. So based on what I have, if I'm trying to prove 1 and 2 are congruent, I'm going to start by saying that 2 is congruent to 3, because if lines are parallel, corresponding angles are congruent. I then can say that angles 1 and 3 are congruent, because if lines are parallel, alternate interior angles are congruent. Now that I know that 2 is congruent to 3 and 1 is congruent to 3, notice 1 and 2 are both congruent to the same angle. So I can now say 1 is congruent to 2. And by the way I have it written, this would be substitution. Again, if you wrote it in a different way, it could also be transitive. But again, in this case, it would be substitution. Okay, let's flip it over to the back, number 5. So number 5, in this one, they're giving us that L is parallel to M, and they want us to prove that angle 2 is congruent to angle 1. Well, if L is parallel to M, I guess they're also telling us 2 is congruent to 1 in the given. If L is parallel to M, I can say 2 is congruent to 3. And if the reason would be if lines are parallel, corresponding angles are congruent. Then for step 3, I can now state, because of these two statements, I can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. It's again by substitution. Now that 1 is congruent to 3, I can now say that J is parallel to K. And the reason is if alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So again, four-step proof, trying to prove that J is parallel to K using alternate interior angles after substitution. Okay, let's move down to number 6. On number 6, they give us that, again, L is parallel to M. And 1 is congruent to 2. Okay, that's the given. And they want us to prove that J is parallel to K again. Again, similar problem, but the angles are kind of a little different places on this one. Well, if L is parallel to M, I can say that 2 is congruent to 3 again. And this would be if lines are parallel, alternate exterior angles are congruent. I know that 1 is congruent to 2 and 2 is congruent to 3, so I can now say that 1 is congruent to 3. In this case, now it's transitive property. And I know if 1 is congruent to 3, I can now say that J is parallel to K, because if corresponding angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. Okay, let's move on to the very last one here. This is number 7. In number 7, they give us that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's the given. They want us to prove that A is parallel to B. So for us to show that A is parallel to B, I've got to show that 3 and 2 are congruent. Well, in this first given, I can say that 3 is congruent to 2, and that's going to be substitution. And notice that the 1s are lined up there. And now if I know 3 and 2 are congruent, I can say that A is parallel to B, and that is if corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel.